The wind howled across the barren land, carrying with it the scent of dust, iron, and old sins. Sheriff Elias Crowe stood silently, his weathered coat brushing against the rough boards of the saloon's back wall. In his grip, dangling upside down like a caught animal, was a young woman, her long hair trailing toward the earth like strands of gold caught in moonlight. Her eyes were closed, but there was no peace in her face, only the pale stillness of someone caught in a storm they did not choose. Elias's jaw was hard, his gray beard streaked with the salt of years and guilt. His revolver rested heavy at his hip, glinting beneath the dim lantern light. Every crease in his leather coat carried a story, and every story was one of blood. "You got anything left to say before I take you in?" he muttered, though the girl did not answer. Her silence wasn't defiance, it was something else, something Elias couldn't place. He had seen criminals fight, plead, and scream, but this quiet was worse. It reminded him of the hush that came before a gunfight, when both men stared across the dusty street, waiting for the inevitable. The town of Ash Hollow had always been a cruel place. Built on greed and gold, it thrived on lawlessness until Elias took the badge years ago. But law here wasn't justice, it was survival, and survival demanded sacrifice. The girl wasn't from Ash Hollow. He could tell by her clothes, fine fabric, delicate stitching, the kind of dress worn in cities far away where the streets were cobbled and lit by lamps. She was an intruder in a land that chewed up strangers and spat out bones. Yet, she wasn't just anyone. 3 nights ago, the town doctor had been found murdered, his throat cut in his own office. The man had been a drunk and a cheat, but he had knowledge about the mine shafts, about the rich veins of silver that men would kill to possess. On his desk was a map, half burned, and footprints that didn't belong to him. Those same footprints had led Elias to the girl. He found her outside the abandoned chapel, barefoot, her dress torn at the hem, carrying a leather satchel. Inside the satchel was a folded paper stained with blood, the other half of the doctor's map. When Elias stepped from the shadows that night, she hadn't run. She just looked at him with wide, haunted eyes, as though she had been waiting for him all along. "Why'd you kill him?" Elias had asked. "I didn't," she had whispered, voice trembling. "I tried to save him." But Elias had heard lies before. He'd lived on them, from outlaws begging for their lives to good men trying to bury their guilt. And so he had tied her wrists and kept her in the holding cell. Now, standing under the black sky, he had taken her out of the jail and into the dark edge of town, not for justice, but for answers. "You don't look like a killer," Elias said, his hand tightening slightly on her ankle. "But then, looks don't mean much in this place." Finally, her lips parted. "If you hang me upside down long enough, Sheriff, the truth won't change." Her voice was calm, far calmer than he expected. It made something cold shift inside his chest. "You think truth matters out here?" Elias asked. "Truth gets buried faster than bodies in Ash Hollow." "Then you know why I'm here," she whispered, her eyes finally opening. They gleamed with something between sorrow and defiance. Elias frowned. "Why don't you tell me?" Her words were soft, but each one cut through him like a blade. "Because your town isn't cursed by men, Sheriff. It's cursed by what sleeps beneath it." Elias's hand froze. He wasn't a man given to superstition, but he had heard whispers, miners who vanished, tunnels that collapsed without reason, screams in the shafts at night. He had buried too many men to ignore the stories completely. "You think I'll believe that?" he growled. She closed her eyes again. "Believe what you want, but when the earth opens, and the blood starts to rise, you'll remember me." The wind shifted then, carrying with it a low, distant rumble. Elias turned his head sharply, scanning the horizon. It wasn't thunder. It came from deep underground, a sound like stone grinding against stone. The girl stirred in his grip, her pale hair swaying. "It's already started." For the first time in years, Elias felt something he thought long dead, fear. He lowered her slowly, letting her feet touch the ground. Her face was flushed from hanging, but her eyes burned with urgency. "Tell me," Elias demanded. "What do you know?" She drew in a shaky breath. "The doctor, he was trying to stop it. He found the old tunnels, deeper than the mines, carved long before men came here. He said something was waking. I tried to help him, but I was too late." Her voice broke. "Someone killed him to keep it hidden." Elias studied her closely, searching for deceit, but all he saw was desperation. "Who?" he pressed. Before she could answer, the ground beneath them shuddered. Dust fell from the saloon's eaves, and a low moan echoed through the night air. Elias reached instinctively for his revolver, though he knew bullets couldn't stop the earth from moving. The girl grabbed his coat sleeve with trembling hands. "You have to let me show you. If you leave me here, Ash Hollow will die." Elias had lived his life on the edge of violence, his heart hardened against pleas and prayers. But something in her eyes, the same haunted gleam that had kept him awake for 3 nights, struck deeper than he wanted to admit. Finally, he holstered his gun. "Fine," he muttered, "but if you're lying." She met his gaze without flinching. "Then kill me yourself." The rumbling grew louder, and somewhere deep below Ash Hollow, something ancient stirred. The night swallowed the town as Elias and the girl moved quickly down the dirt road. Lanterns flickered in windows, their glow trembling like frightened hearts. No one came outside. The people of Ash Hollow knew when to keep their doors barred. "What's your name?" Elias asked, his boots crunching against the gravel. "Clara," she said softly. He nodded. "Clara, you'd best pray what you're leading me to is worth my time." Clara didn't respond. Her hands clutched the satchel against her chest, the same one he'd taken from her days before. Inside was the half-burned map, its edges blackened but its symbols clear, a series of tunnels spiraling deep beneath the earth. They reached the outskirts, where the land dipped toward the old mining grounds. The shafts had been abandoned after too many men failed to return. Some said the tunnels collapsed, others whispered of things moving in the dark. Clara stopped at the mouth of a boarded shaft. "Here," she said, breath quick. "This is where the doctor wanted to go." Elias eyed the boards. "That shaft's been sealed for years." "Not sealed enough," Clara whispered, her fingers tracing a mark carved into the wood, a symbol Elias didn't recognize. It looked older than the town itself. With a grunt, Elias pried the boards loose. The stench of damp earth wafted out, carrying with it something foul, metallic, and wrong. He pulled his revolver free. "After you." Clara lit a lantern and stepped inside. Elias followed, the beam of light cutting through the suffocating dark. The tunnels were narrow, walls slick with moisture, the air heavy and wet. The deeper they went, the stronger the sound became, the low, grinding moan that set Elias's teeth on edge. "Tell me what we're walking into," Elias demanded. Clara's voice echoed faintly. "The doctor believed something was buried here long before the mines. Something that feeds." He said the silver veins weren't just metal, they were veins in the truest sense. And Ash Hollow was built on its body. Elias cursed under his breath. "That's madness." "Is it?" Clara shot back. "Haven't you seen the disappearances? The men who go missing without a trace. The tunnels that collapse without reason. The blood in the soil." He didn't answer. Because he had. They pressed on until the tunnel widened into a cavern. The walls shimmered with silver, veins glinting like 1,000 staring eyes. In the center lay a pit, black and yawning, as though the earth itself had torn open. Clara knelt at the edge, holding up the map. "The doctor said this is where it sleeps." Before Elias could speak, the ground shivered violently. A sound rose from the pit, a deep, guttural cry that rattled his bones. Then, from the darkness, something moved. It wasn't a man, it wasn't an animal, it was something in between, flesh fused with stone, veins glowing faintly like molten silver. Its eyes were hollow pits, yet Elias felt its gaze pierce straight through him. Clara screamed, stumbling back. Elias raised his revolver and fired. The shot echoed, sparks flying as the bullet struck stone like flesh. The creature shrieked but did not fall. More movement stirred within the pit. Shadows rose, shapes writhing and clawing, as though the cavern itself was giving birth. "Run!" Elias roared, but Clara didn't move. She clutched the satchel tighter, pulling out a small leather-bound book, the doctor's journal. "No," he said, "there's a way to bind it again." Elias grabbed her arm. "You'll be dead before you read a word of that thing." But she wrenched free, flipping the book open with trembling hands. Strange symbols filled the pages, glowing faintly in the lantern light. The creatures clawed their way from the pit, their bodies twisting, their mouths filled with jagged stone teeth. Elias fired again and again, bullets sparking uselessly. Clara began to chant. Her voice was weak at first, but grew stronger, echoing against the cavern walls. The air vibrated with power, the ground trembling as if in protest. The creatures shrieked, writhing as the silver veins in the walls pulsed with light. One lurched forward, swiping a clawed hand toward Clara, but Elias threw himself between them, his revolver cracking inches from its face. "Keep going," he shouted. Clara's voice rose, the words sharp and ancient. The cavern blazed with light, silver veins surging like rivers. The creatures howled, collapsing to the ground, their bodies cracking like stone under pressure. Finally, with a deafening roar, the pit sealed shut. The ground shuddered, then fell still. Silence. Elias's chest heaved, smoke curling from his revolver. He looked at Clara, who was pale, trembling, but alive. She closed the book slowly. It's bound again, but not forever. Elias holstered his weapon, staring at the sealed pit. His mind reeled, trying to reconcile what he had seen with everything he believed. You weren't lying, he said finally. Clara met his eyes, her expression weary. I told you, Ash Hollow isn't cursed by men. It's cursed by what sleeps beneath it. He nodded slowly. For once, Elias Crowe, the hardened sheriff of Ash Hollow, felt small in the face of something far greater than law, than greed, than men's violence. But as he walked Clara out of the cavern, one thought burned in his mind. If it could wake once, it could wake again. And next time, Ash Hollow might not survive.